You know, one of the things that I don't think we give enough credit to
This is Auto Collabs.
as an industry, and us at More Than Cars, but also as an industry, is that you need actual journalists and actual people with actual relationships to generate the news that we all talk about, right? We kind of have the easy job, and we generate some of it from the start. But there's a whole team. Team is too small a word, right? There is a cadre, there is a battalion of automotive industry journalists that are constantly out there talking to manufacturers, suppliers, dealers, tech companies to actually bring the news to the surface. And today's guest, Jamie Butters, has had a big hand in that, and will continue now that he's moving on to Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, I'm excited that that he's moving on to Wall Street Journal. I think that that's going to be a key play for like retail automotive to get a different perspective into a broader publication. But I love what you're saying there, and I hope you can get into this conversation with him. But it's really interesting to me that in this world of AI, like AI still needs source material, right? Like we still need to provide source material to everything else that we're talking about. And there still will have to be people that are on the ground thinking about the source material of any industry, any human connection, any conversation. And I think Jamie Butters is great at digging up source material.
Why don't we dig in? I got to say, I have to imagine the journalists are surrounded by cork board and like lines of yarn because they're like
cigarettes
and like tweed jackets with elbow patches. Anyways, off on a tangent. Hey guys, I hope you enjoy this episode with Jamie Thaddeus Bartholomew Butters on Auto Collabs.
Not his real name. Jamie Butters, my friend, it is good to have you. I believe the first time you've ever been on this show. Welcome.
Hey, Paul. Well, we've recorded some. We were at NAMAD. I joined you. So unless this is a separate show, with the same
I'm
team,
not even sure what show it is. It's the same team. We have some shows, but either way, big transition going on, and from you moving from Automotive News in the Wall Street Journal, and like you have this interesting perspective on the industry, and I think you also have a very unique place in the industry as the editor for Auto News for so long. I think people just associate you with this center point of what's going on in the industry, and so I think like because there's a change being made, I think like it's different than anybody else, you know. So I'm excited about it. I'm a longtime Wall Street Journal reader, so I always joke with when we go into the airport and stuff, and there's like a Wall Street Journal store. I always tell everyone I'm going to walk in and show everyone that I'm a subscriber.
Right, show your card.
and so tell us a little bit about your journey in automotive, though, because like your time with Automotive News, wasn't it? You were covering automotive a long time, for a long time, and you bring a lot of that experience forward, and you kind of have some vision for the next stage of your career. So I'd love to just unpack that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I've been doing this a long time.
It wasn't an old joke, I promise. Yeah.
But no, you know, it's been really interesting because I started covering autos in the late 90s, you know, when my wife and I both worked at the Lexington Herald Leader down in central Kentucky. Toyota had a plant nearby, and I covered a job one, you know, for the Sienna minivan rolling off the line there. And Toyota ended up, long story short, my first auto show ended up being Tokyo in 1997.
First one was Tokyo?
Yeah, before I ever went to an auto show.
Talk about going deep end right out of the gate.
You know, learning the industry from Toyota was a really different perspective, and which especially drove home when I moved to Detroit, and people had a little different point of view growing up, you know, around a really unionized auto industry. But I learned about the industry, you know, really from Toyota and its manufacturing processes, and also that Tokyo 97 show was when Toyota and Honda first came out with hybrids, and this was, you know, the beginning of electrification.
97?
Yeah. The Prius and the Honda Insight. Right. And so, and even at the time, and what I came back and my main, you know, project that I wrote about from the trip was, you know, that this was a new kind of vehicle, a new kind of powertrain, and Toyota saw it, this gas and electric combination with the little animation on the screen to show you where your power is coming from and how regeneration, recharges the batteries, that this was a stepping stone to electric vehicles, which, we'd hardly had any. I mean, the EV1. And then they saw that as a stepping stone to hydrogen fuel cell. And here I am, almost 30 years later.
Yeah.
Toyota is more than 50% hybrids, at least in the US. The US market is around 8% electric, 1 out of 12. That's not as much as some people were talking about just a few years ago, but
not even
it's
close.
A big difference from 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So it's more than 1 million vehicles a year, and that's an interesting growth curve. But these changes take a long time. Is one of the things I've learned.
Apparently you can't legislate your way as fast as you would like.
No, not if you're going to let the companies survive as independent, capitalist entities, because it's just too hard to make money on those vehicles, without a lot of support at this point. But yeah, so I was at the Herald Leader until 2000, the day after the Bush-Gore election. We moved to Detroit. I was at the Detroit Free Press for 8 years, basically the whole George W. Bush years. I did take a little time off to go to the University of Michigan on a Knight Wallace Fellowship, which was fun. I got to go to Argentina and Istanbul, really places I'd never been before. I'd been a little to Asia and a little to Europe. I'd never been to South America. I'd never been to the Middle East. So that was really fascinating. That's when I started editing. I came in as a reporter, and then after the fellowship, we got right before I went on the fellowship, the newspaper got sold to Gannett. And I came back, and basically everybody from my direct boss through the chairman of the board was different.
Oh, wow.
But, so I had to find my way at a new place that I had been working for 6 years, and became the auto editor and then autos and business editor. And then right around when the economy started falling apart, I went to Bloomberg and ran the auto team there through the bankruptcies of GM and Chrysler, and being, covering that for a financial focused news organization, was really intense. It had seemed, it's hard to even remember at this point, but, it had seemed unthinkable that General Motors could go bankrupt, even though their finances were so bad. It was just like they were too big. It would be too chaotic. And then they started talking about, there's maybe this little little used clause in the bankruptcy, and we can just sort of pull out the assets and put them into a new co. And so the Section 363 became the gospel, and the government, managed those bankruptcies and kept the auto industry moving. Really fascinating times. Then, the competitive difference between GM and Ford, because Ford didn't go through the bankruptcy and get their balance sheet cleaned up like that, was really fascinating. And then in 2018, I went to Automotive News and really got to learn more about the retail end of the business. Obviously, Automotive News doesn't just cover dealers; it covers the whole industry. But it was something that I didn't have as much exposure to, working for general interest newspapers or the financial news wires. So that was really educational for me. And now next month I'll go to the Wall Street Journal, and it was a place that really inspired my desire to get into business journalism. It was really the gold standard. I think it's gotten more competitive for business journalism.
Tell me about that.
Back
the inspiration back, like when did you hold that edition up in your hands, and with the way the print feels, and you say one day Wall Street Journal?
I never didn't know I really ever thought I would make it there. But when I was in college, they'd have discounted subscriptions to the newspapers. You'd see them littered all up and down the college neighborhoods. People
everywhere
would subscribe, and then they don't always get up early in the morning to go bring them in. But you talk about, back in the print era, I grew up in the era of newspapers before the interwebs, and it was so great because they had the 2 news summary columns. They had the 2, main heavy stories, the leaders, and then the A-head, the feature story at the, that started around the middle of page 1. Always was a super entertaining read. I loved the the predictability of the format and the quality, of what was in there. It's just like nobody could do what they did. Well, then a short time later, a few people from the Wall Street Journal broke off and created Bloomberg News. And with the backing of the richest man in New York, built quite an estimable news army.
That'll help
around the world.
Always helps. Yep.
Yeah. So, the Journal, Reuters, and Bloomberg are probably the biggest, global business news entities. And yeah, the Wall Street Journal has just always been, it's such an iconic place. I mean, we talk about, you look at the biggest measure of the market, or, a lot of people even use it as a measure of the economy, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average. I mean, that was created by Dow and Jones, and, Dow Jones is the name of the company that owns the Wall Street Journal, yes, and that is owned by News Corp. So it's complicated, but
it
yeah,
wasn't back in the day, right?
Yeah, it wasn't back in the
It wasn't back in the day, and it's more complicated. So I think a lot of our audience is definitely the dealer side, and automotive news is a staple. I've just been in and out of hundreds and hundreds of dealerships in my career, and always see a copy of automotive news laying on the table in the GM's office or the owner's office. But I do also see a lot of Wall Street Journal, and I had one very specific, and probably the first time I became a Wall Street Journal reader is because I was in Greg Sioka Sr.'s office, and the Sioka Auto Group. He's broken through the top 50 now, and he's on a streak. And this had to be over 10 years ago. And he gave me his copy of Wall Street Journal, and he said, Paul, I read this every single morning, and it is one of the ways that I've been able to be as successful as I am. He goes, because it's important that you know what's going on, not just here, but around you in the rest of the ecosystem. And he gave me a copy. He said, you absolutely have to subscribe. From that day, I went home and I subscribed, digital edition, and I've paid attention ever since. And honestly, I have to say that the type of journalism that Wall Street Journal has given to me over the last years, especially through all the tumultuous years of the pandemic and all of the social unrest and political unrest and all the things that have been going on, there is a bit of solace in the Wall Street Journal that I felt like I could read and not walk away like riled up, I guess I should say. And so it's always been an interesting thing, and like dealers I have known like Mr. Sioka who rely on it, for not just the retail auto news, because without a doubt, like they don't talk that much about dealers. No. And when I do see a dealer in there, it's like my friend Earl Stewart from Earl Stewart Toyota. Well, it used to be frequently quoted in the Wall Street Journal because he's got such a unique perspective on the industry. You have, I've learned so much from you and from Dan Shine over the years, understanding the different components that it takes to cover the industry. I think a lot of our audience thinks of it retailers first, but then to understand the OEMs, obviously an important part, suppliers, a very important part, the political climate or the geopolitical climate and what's happening on vehicles, I think has just come to the forefront more than it ever has in the last 3 years because of Chinese EVs and what has been going on, in those pandemic years. I feel like, we kind of got caught sleeping a little bit, tried to play catch up. But obviously, that's a major component to what is going to be happening on the front lines of the dealership. So when you go there and tell us about the type of reporting you're going to be doing and why retail auto dealers should be paying attention to the coverage.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Sioka is right, and it's good of you to take his advice, right? I mean, automotive news is absolutely essential. I think anybody at any stage in an automotive career needs to be reading automotive news, and whether you're a beginning engineer or accountant at a supplier or an automaker, or you're honestly, even, I think a service tech, any salesperson should know more about what's going on in the industry than what their boss is telling them they need to do.
Yeah, I would say anybody that has an aspiration to continue to grow in the industry. We'll put it there.
Right. And then, but beyond that, it's not just enough to know everything happening in your industry. You need more of that outside context. There's only so much about the global economy or financial markets or even, the Federal Reserve that automotive news can get into. But, somebody like the Wall Street Journal with teams around the globe, really, top experts covering, finance and economics, and you see parallels in other industries. Some things that are similar, some things that are different, and it's great to read, you know, 1,000-word, 3,000-word story that takes you deep into a company in an industry you wouldn't necessarily read about normally. But you can read that and say, oh, yeah, that's like what we went through with cyber attack. That's what we went through with our generational employees trying to communicate to millennials and Gen Z.
There you go.
You know, and there are lessons to be learned, and that perspective that comes from other, you know, high level news outlets, you know, and the journal, I think, is one of the highest. Did I answer your question, or did I leave something laying on the table? I felt like I missed something. But
why,
that was where
no,
you started.
I think
I
you
feel
answered
really strongly about it. It's so important. You know, no one, and you shouldn't just read the Wall Street Journal, right? You should get a variety inputs and information from a variety of sources, so you can, you know, weigh a point of view against another. You know, hold each other accountable. You know, sometimes everybody gets it wrong. You know, what we try to have in the fourth estate, you know, sort of a self-correcting mechanism. You know, if the Wall Street Journal writes something and then the New York Times writes something that conflicts with it, you know, we're going to prosecute, we're going to dig in and try to see, you know, who's right or how much of it's right. Is there more nuance?
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, that competition draws everybody to the same, you know, conclusions. But along the way, it's always good to get multiple perspectives.
You know, we're in this seismic shift right now of technology and writing in general because of the emergence of, you know, AI and generative AI, and now you know, AI is doing research, deep research, agents that are browsing the web. It's obviously upending just about every industry, but I feel like the news industry is toward the front of the pack as far as the one that is being forced to have to like evolve and change and figuring out how are the humans going to remain important moving forward in this world where everyone's trying to like just deploy, I don't know, let's just be honest, like people try to deploy fast technology to get a mediocre response, right? Because they deploy the technology fast, and like how do we move forward as a news industry in this world where people are able to get these fast answers that they maybe don't vet fully? It's a complex question to answer in like the 4 minutes we have left, but we could do a whole hour on this.
I mean, it's challenging for news consumers, whatever, you know, they're trying to learn about. But I think, you know, there's definitely value in the trust that readers can have in a brand like the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Automotive News, etc. But also there's no substitute for the actual reporting. I mean, AI can give you an answer. You can spit anything into Google or Siri and they'll give you an answer, and they're doing the best they can, but all they can use is the information that's already been published by somebody. And that has to start with reporters on the ground, you know, editors and reporters, journalists making connections between, you know, one policy and another, or one trend and another. You know, that's where you have to go out and talk to the dealers, talk to the executives, talk to the analysts, you know, so it isn't just analyst reports and press releases that are being digested by an AI bot. You know, the humans have to, you know, maybe they use those AI tools sometimes, but they have to be the ones, you know, deciding kind of, you know, what's news and why is it news? You know, what people can get the news, they can get the information. What did GM report in its earnings last week? But it's, you know, why were the earnings down, and how did the tariffs affect the earnings, and what does the company have to say about how they're moving forward? What do other people have to say about it? How confident are the dealers? And it's the journalists who have to go out and ask those questions, get the good answers from trusted, you know, reliable sources, you know, data sources, and the dealers themselves, you know, reliable people on the ground who will tell you what's going on. You know, that's what we can provide. And I feel like that's our best defense against AI, is to have the human intelligence, the human relations, and relay those in a, you know, hopefully in a compelling, you know, storytelling way.
I also feel like sentiment control is something that, and I'll say control, but like, I mean, keeping it on the rails, right? Because a lot of times you have this like ambitious, I'll call it ambitious sentiment that comes across from some people in the news industry. And like, not getting political, but whatever you believe and whatever your beliefs are, right? There's no shortage of passionate sentiment that comes alongside the facts. And so I think that measured down the line, humans who are saying we're reporting the facts, we're asking the question, we're building the connections. Really, these are like harbingers of trust that we need. And I think we'll continue to need as people start to believe less and less of what they see.
With AI in that front too. You're right. I mean, it's amazing the things you see already on social media, and that look so real or so nearly real. You know, you can believe them if you want to. You can kind of believe them if you want to. Maybe it's just a special effect, you know, on a real person. But it's not going to be long before they will just look so real, and you're going to have some provenance. You know, whether you say, I can trust this video because it literally is coming from whitehouse.gov, right? That's how I believe it's the president, or it's coming from, you know, Fox News. It's coming from CBS. It's, you know, it's somebody that we know is telling us they've vetted it and that it's real. But all the other stuff you just see shared around on, you know, Twitter and Instagram is going to have a higher and higher propensity to be fake.
Yeah. So last question, because we only have about a minute left. Where can we see and read and pay attention to your work moving forward? What exactly you're going to be doing, and where can we see your work?
Yeah, well, you know, WSJ.com is our main platform. If you go, autos is not the biggest part of the Wall Street Journal anymore. It sort of was maybe 30 years ago. It was a very big part. It's a little less now, but if you look across the top, there'll be tabs, you know, politics and world, and one is business, and you drop down and there's an auto button under that.
Yep,
and
I see. I read
so
it every
you can
morning.
always see, you know, there's always a handful of stories, a story or three, and you know, that's where we'll be feeding the beast. I'll have 6 reporters starting out, 2 in Detroit, 2 in New York, and 2 in Chicago covering manufacturing. So I'll be over autos and manufacturing. Look forward to you know, really having this great big stage to tell auto stories, but especially after, you know, my 6.5 years at AN, sharing some of the insights that I've gleaned about the retail business, you know, with the broader Wall Street Journal audience. I think they're going to find this industry, that part of the industry, as fascinating as I do.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Jamie, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you today. Thanks for giving us some time, and best of luck on your first foray into the Wall Street Journal, which sounds like it was kind of a childhood dream. Thanks so much, Paul. You guys have been such great support for me all these years.
I think that has to be his real name. The one that Michael said before you talked to him. I think that has to be his real name.
Jamie Thaddeus Bartholomew Butters.
It has to be. Now that he's with the Wall Street Journal, he has to be official like that.
He's a four-name. He's a four-name person. Look, Jamie, the first time I ever met him, I all of a sudden was like, I really like this guy's vibes. And you don't know, right? Like, he's just a name in the auto news that, you know what I mean? And I think he's got Bill Pullman vibes. You know Bill Pullman, who's the president of Independence Day? That's Jamie Butters. But the fact that he's getting to go to kind of like, you know, I won't say a childhood dream, but like when he started into journalism in college, the fact that Wall Street Journal was always like that aspirational, you know, trying to get there is great to see him get there. But also, like you kind of said this before we started the interview, Kyle, that there's an opportunity now for a deeper understanding of the retail dealer to become more broadly known in Wall Street Journal, because he didn't even know much about it when he started at Automotive News, and then he just built a lot of relationships there. So I'm looking forward to that part of it. I mean, he's the guy you want on your team. Period.
Well, I hope he fact checks us. I mean, this is such a big part. You guys talked a little bit about an AI driven world. I'd like to think it's going to be like an AI augmented or enhanced world, but journalism, to your point, where we started, is going to be so critical for authenticating. I think it's like a weird reversal. It's like human authentication will be really important in a AI authenticated world.
So wild. Well, hey, look, Jamie, on behalf of the team here at ASOTU More Than Cars and our entire industry, kudos to you. Automotive News will miss you, but the Wall Street Journal crew, I'm sure, will get the best of what we know is possible in retail auto. If you haven't gone to Jamie's LinkedIn, congratulate him on the new role and follow him for all the stuff that he's going to be sharing with much more of culture at the Wall Street Journal. On behalf of Paul J. Daly, Michael Cirillo, and myself, Kyle Mountsier. See you next time here on Auto Collabs.
Welcome to Auto Collabs.
Why are we recording?
Are we rolling yet?